All right. I don't really film that many IRL videos for my channel. I don't think I've ever actually done much other than gaming in years. But tonight, I wanted to make a little video talking about a little story called Berserk. I'm sure you're familiar with it, as is probably half of the world, at least anybody that's a fan of manga, comic books, video games, what have you. Its influence was exponential across the board. Now, for context, I'm a 22-year-old man from America who's grown up with a fairly respectable upbringing. My parents, I've always grown up with love for my family. I've been very privileged with many things in my life, and reading Berserk has honestly been one of the more therapeutic experiences that I can honestly say that I've ever had. And the thing about it is, I think a lot of it has to do with nihilism. Nihilism is very much not the central focus of Berserk, I'd say, but it's one of the key themes. It's both nihilism and perseverance, because when you look at a man like Guts, born from struggle, born immediately from suffering and pain and death, he was literally born from the corpse of his dead, rotting mother. And literally from that moment, he had very few moments in his early upbringing where he never knew anything but strife and conflict. Lest I mention a certain fellow named Donovan. If you've read the manga, I don't need to elaborate, because YouTube will definitely pull this video. And that's just like the childhood arc. Not even the golden age. Like, for context, I finished the manga, I'd say a couple months ago, and I'm on my second read through. I just started the conviction arc again, and I gotta say, after having finished the entirety of the pages penned by the late Kentaro Miura, may he rest in peace, from chapter 1 to chapter 364, the first read through is it's hold on, I gotta light another cigarette. How do I describe this? Red Dead Redemption, arguably one of the greatest games ever made of all time. I'll make that claim. Most people will. Although I started playing New Vegas, and I'd say it's probably my number 2 contender. Anyways, I'm getting off track. The biggest thing is the second time, like with Red Dead, the first time you play it, it's an experience. One that cannot be replicated again. That first playthrough is something you will never experience again. But that second playthrough, the first time you play through the game, knowing the context of how the full events began and ended, it completely reevaluates the entire perspective of how you read that story. And when it comes to Berserk, I think it's even tenfold, because if you remember, Berserk started in, God, I feel like I'm committing a travesty not knowing the exact dates. The late 1980s, Kentaro Miura was in college when he penned the prototype chapters, and I want to believe the early 90s was when the first official chapters came out, because the Golden Age anime debuted in 1997, where Miura was overseeing the production of that. And the reason the Golden Age anime only ended at that scene in the eclipse is because, realistically speaking, by that point, I don't even think Miura had finished the conviction. I think the conviction arc was just starting. So there really wasn't a whole lot to, there really wasn't a whole lot of space forward that they could have carried the show, although knowing now what we know, it kills my soul that we never got a season 2, at the very least, showing the Lost Children arc. Like, oh my god. What one can only dream. Now, getting back to what I was saying, that second read-through of Berserk. The first read-through, it's like... Let's talk about Griffith for a second. I gotta spark this. Also, this video is probably about 15, 20 minutes long, so bear with me. I'm not editing this. Oh shit. Now here's the thing about Griffith. Oh, Griffith. Griffith. Where do we start? Where do we begin? On surface level, he's an enigma. Those first chapters where you meet him, when Guts fought Bezuso at that great battle, and he witnessed his prowess. Griffith, from that moment, first-time readers, they don't recognize it, but from that moment, Griffith knew what he wanted. That look in his eye, that conviction, for lack of a better term. That was the moment where not just for Guts, not just for Griffith, not just for the Band of the Hawk, but for every mortal being, and even immortal beings, the God Hand and such. From that moment, the shift of causality began. Because remember, and also I should say, I'm going to put a spoiler tag in this just in case, because I consider it the greatest travesty on earth if you have the story of Berserk spoiled for you. More so than like the classic Star Wars films, more so than Lord of the Rings, more so than anything else. There are some key moments in Berserk that have to be experienced firsthand for that first time, because I mean, I could ramble about it. Anyway, so Griffith. The thing about Griffith is first-time readers, they assume so many things about him. They don't know if he's the villain. Well, okay, backtrack. They know he's the villain because Black Swordsman arc kind of laid it out pretty, kind of spoiled. See, here's the thing. First-time readers, you read through the Black Swordsman arc, and because it's one, I mean, granted, I own the deluxe volumes, but it's one, for the deluxe volumes, it's one big book, a whole arc. And only at the end, you really get an understanding of Griffith. But even then, it's a sliver. You don't know who was this guy. He's now known as Femto, the gay Batman, but Guts calls him Griffith. Now, excuse me. No, I guess I'll just fast forward a bit. Y'all, if you're watching this video, anyway, I'm rambling. Fuck, I'm ADD, whatever. The big thing, that second reread where you know the full context of Griffith's motives, his ambition, and his dream, that gives much better context to every one of his actions throughout the story, because I lost my beer. Even post Golden Age, like I was rereading today, the chapter, the Hill of Swords. If you've played Elden Ring or any Souls game, you might know what I'm talking about, or if you've read the chapters. The Hill of Swords, the monument that the monument that Rickert made to the Band of the Hawk. Rickert didn't know why the Band of the Hawk died. All he knew is that they disappeared and they died, or they're gone, or whatever. And then Griffith shows up and just basically vibe checks Guts and is like, yeah, remember all the shit that happened between us? Nothing's changed. I still want my kingdom. And the fervor and the hatred you see in this one panel, specifically where, multiple panels actually, where Guts is almost, he can't comprehend what he's hearing. The idea that after everything that I went through, everything that happened, nothing's changed. And that's probably, I'd say, the first of many major gut checks that Guts goes through throughout the entire story. Because, especially, I gotta, again, backtrack. Let's talk about Goto. Guts never really had a father figure. Gambino, may he rot in hell, was nothing more than the man that put a blade in his hand. And other things, as you know. And especially when you see that really, the Scars chapters 1 and 2, with Casca and Guts in the forest. It's side note. Those chapters between Guts and Casca with that scene is probably the single greatest portrayal of any, like, it's not even purely sexual or it's not even pornographic. It's the most raw portrayal of a true intimate romantic connection I've ever seen in any piece of fiction, where both sides of just completely drop the veil. Like they like after everything that's built up in the story, they finally drop the veil and just tell all. And it's a very tender and a very beautiful scene, but yet, of course, in traditional Berserk fashion, it's not all silver lining and roses, because Guts has that flashback with Donovan. And that's the thing that I think is one of the most reoccurring themes within Berserk, is perseverance through absolute uncertainty and overwhelming odds for the sole sake of perseverance. I mean, granted, oh my god, the newest chapters. If you haven't read the chapters after Kentaro Miura made, I gotta say, his buddy, I'm a little drunk, so I'm blanking on the name. Miura and I forget his name, but the wonderful man that was Kentaro Miura's closest friend throughout school, high school, and all that got that, like, if you don't know the story, Miura was the man that helped. I fucking hate that I'm blanking on his name. It's not Oda. That's the guy that does One Piece. Koji Mori. That's his name. Koji Mori. The man that was best friends with Kentaro Miura throughout all of high school and college. And long story short, they grew up together. They were best friends. They grew up making manga together from a young age. And Koji Mori went through this stint in life where, I want to say it was like post-high school, roughly around that era, maybe his college days. He was feeling a bit jaded with his overall his drive to be a mangaka, a manga artist. And he kind of went through a slum. Everybody's got those moments in life. And Miura, being the great man that he was, and the great friend that he was, he, not pressuring his friend like, hey, you need to do the manga, it was your only thing in life, but reaching out to him saying, hey, you want to start making manga again? You want to get back to what we used to do in school? And it really helped reinvigorate Mori's passion for the art. And the really bittersweet thing is, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but when Miura passed, Koji Mori created Berserk Chapter 365, which is it's not even really Berserk. It's a memoir to Miura written in manga form, where Koji Mori tells the story I've just explained, their backstory. He tells it in much greater depth and detail than I could ever convey, and he does it in a very heartfelt and a very eloquent way to memorialize the friendship they had. And it's very bittersweet because Miura disclosed to more, like, during his, because it's kind of a theory that Miura knew he had limited days. It based on the way that during his final years working on Berserk, especially with the Fantasia arc, he started assigning and teaching other people to be able to replicate his art style and his writing and everything else, because being a manga artist, I mean, shit, look at, is it Toriyama? Yeah, Toriyama-san, the creator of Dragon Ball. He unfortunately passed away due to some was it a stroke? I don't remember. It was some health condition due to the ongoing stress. And Miura passed away in 2021 of an aortic dissection, not a heart attack, an aortic dissection. His heart ripped itself apart. Which really just begs the question of how much stress was he on, like, because this was his life's work. He was like around my age when he started Berserk in college. And I'm getting sidetracked. Anyways, Koji Mori is continuing Berserk, and he knows the ending, and he's trying to put to pen and paper the final scripts for what Miura had together, his plans for how the story would end. And if you, again, I'm really trying not to spoil, but if you have read the newest chapter of Berserk, maybe the last 5 chapters that came out, I don't think Guts has ever been at a lower point in his life. Ever. Like, legitimately speaking, I am worried. Because at any given point in the story, there was one thing that Guts could rely on. And that was his will to fight, specifically his sword. Ever since he was a child, the one thing that has kept his psyche intact is his sword. And it's genuinely heartbreaking to see. Fuck it, I'm putting full spoiler tags on this video so I can just give you the full detail. When Guts sees Griffith again, after he destroyed Skellig Island and the fairies and all of that, after everything that's happened, after Casca finally got her memories back, Griffith shows up. And rips away everything that Guts worked for the past 20 years in real life of chapters of us waiting. Everything from the conviction, from right after the fucking Eclipse arc, when he's in Goto's cave with Casca and he first realizes what's happened to her mind. Everything up to that point is gone. All of his struggling. It's not that it's for naught, but, and this is the thing, is it's not like the story it's not like all hope is lost, but it's so hard because Casca has enough of her memory back to where she wants to get back to Guts. She knows what he went through, and she wants to, in a sense, repay the effort he went through. And it's just, God, this video might be closer to 45 minutes to an hour. Bear with me. I can only imagine what longtime fans who have been reading since the first chapters came out in the 90s feel like, because the full spectrum of emotion I felt when I saw those panels where Griffith showed up and Casca sees him with her mind intact enough to remember what happened. What would happen if you took the victim of some god-awful sex crime, and then years after she's finally been breaking through her trauma to be able to confront what happened, at the very least recognize and remember, and breaking out of the fugue state or so what, and then you have the rapist show up and just be like, hey, how's it going? Like, so Casca's mind breaks again, and if you think her mind breaks, the look you see on Guts' face as Griffith is holding Casca in his arms on Zod, the Immortal's back, carrying her aloft into the sky. It's not even hatred you see in his eyes. For the first time in a long time, you see true, utter despair in his eyes. Possibly for the first time ever. The closest time I can think of are two key moments where Guts was pushed to a point like this. And that was the first time he met Zod the Immortal in the Golden Age. If you remember, he had fought only mortal men up to this moment. When he saw Zod, he shit himself. He wanted to tuck tail and run. And who would fucking blame him? Now, things changed. And by this point in the story, Zod has a healthy amount of both respect and fear of Guts, because remember, Guts is I'm totally off track. I forgot. During this moment, at the climax of the Fantasia chapters, when Griffith shows up and steals Casca again, Guts is still wearing the Berserker armor. And the crazy thing is, when he sees Griffith, Guts has so much immediate anger out of nowhere. And remember, he's very much broken down to this point where Guts is physically almost at the point of losing it. If you remember the predating chapters where he meets the Skull Knight again, and there's that great conversation where the Skull Knight says, like, basically, Guts is like, why are you here? And Skull Knight's like, nothing more than to witness the end of a journey. It is not always a happy thing. That shit went so fucking hard. But anyways, in that moment, the Skull Knight was like, all right, I think it's time you know the truth. So they met with Hanar. And Hanar, the Dwarven blacksmith, immediately recognized the armor and was like, oh, hey, I never thought I'd see that again. Let it go alone with a guy alive wearing it. All right. And the Skull Knight is like, "Oh, wise Smith, show us the truth." Well, no, I don't think he says that, but like, he's like, no, no. He's like, "I need to get my armor fixed." He's like, "All right, cool." And then Hanar's like, "Oh, by the way, boyo, you want to see a blood memory of old?" Bink! And he hits the armor with a hammer, and it locks in, and he just wraps some dwarven chains around him. And everybody else is like, "Oh, fuck, you woke up the beast." He's like, "Nah, he'd be fine. It'd just be a blood memory from the olden times of the previous wearer." And then Guts got to see a blood memory from the previous wearer, Skull Knight. And he got to see why the Skull Knight is the Skull Knight. And if you remember, there was a different God Hand, save for Void. Void was still there, but it was 4 other completely different members of the God Hand with an entirely different appearance, aesthetic. Even the hellish vortexes you see during this eclipse in this flashback look nothing like the hellish shit you saw in the eclipse. Which begs the question, when did that happen? Because Geyser lived thousands of years prior. Eclipse happens every 216 years. Like, it's speculative. It's kind of... There's some potholes regarding the whole exact times and dates. But the biggest thing is, we know that the Skull Knight and Guts, they're not just kindred spirits in a sense. They've both walked similar paths. Not exactly the same path. It's kind of... Skull Knight is basically Guts if he goes too far. But maybe not. One could make the argument that Skull Knight is an image of a past rendition of what Guts could be. But the problem is Skull Knight's hatred, specifically towards the God Hand, is for a whole different reason. I mean, he lost his queen, he lost the love of his life, but they have different flavors of rage, so to say. And I think the biggest difference is that Skull Knight embraced his hatred, and he even said himself that all that remains is the remnants of a grudge within him. All he is the remnants of a grudge. And Guts' whole story arc has been this constant, like I was saying at the beginning of this video, he keeps getting these gut checks, figuring out, like, okay, are you a man or a monster? Will you give in to your hatred, or will you let go for the greater good? And I think part of it is, with the way the chapters are now, I think Guts is officially at a turning point, because he's locked away in a cell. Even the Kushan Empire themselves, they have him sealed away from his armor and everything, because Daiba, the great Kushan mage, even he refers to, in earlier chapters when Guts is fighting the Kushans during the Falcon of the Millennium Empire arc, he refers to him as the prana of Durja, I believe. It comes from Hindu lore, and it's basically this idea of Durja. I could totally be butchering the names, by the way, and I apologize if I am. Durja was kind of I can't remember if she was like second to Shiva or she was a manifestation of Shiva. I don't know. I really don't want to misspeak about whatever, but even in the semi-Hindu lore that the Kushans follow, in their religious practice, they recognize that Guts is a kind of prophetic being, a kind of dark omen in a sense, and they know that he is such a dangerous weapon, psychologically, physically, and otherwise, that they have to keep them a lock away. And this is the problem, is that is exactly what the Beast of Darkness wants. If you remember the panels, where Guts is in the cell. Actually, I misspoke. The Beast of Darkness doesn't appear in the most recent chapter. It was a couple chapters prior where they're on the ship and everybody else is already really depressed because the fairy island is gone and everybody's sad. It's really fucked up. But the person who's having it worst of all is Guts, because he's sitting in the corner of the ship in his own private quarters looking at the Dragon Slayer. And there's that panel where he looks at the sword and he keeps saying to himself, the only thing I could rely on is you. And he basically collapses to the ground and just cries. Like he can't even look at the sword anymore. And that's what the Beast wants, because in that moment, you see Guts just collapses on the ground. As the Dragon Ball fans love to say, he does the classic Yamcha pose. I can't do it while standing up. And that's when the Beast shows up. Basically tells him, like, I know exactly what you want. You want power. And he looks at the Beast and he says, yes. You want strength. You want hatred. You want to get back at Griffith. Because remember, during that climactic moment in the end of the Fantasia arc, when he fights Griffith, or he tries to fight him, he swings at Griffith with all his might so fast that the Beast of Darkness couldn't even take over. That's the other thing I forgot to mention earlier is he had so much, after years of wanting to get back at Griffith, he has his chance. And you see Guts lunges so fast at Griffith that the Beast is either caught off guard, and this is the thing, either the Beast was caught off guard and wasn't even able to take over in time, or, and this is where it gets interesting, what if the Beast didn't take over because he didn't want to in that moment, because he knew it wasn't the right moment? Because when Guts swings at Griffith, it's not that he misses. It's that the blade literally clips through him like he's a Gary's Mod admin and he has no clip enabled. Save for a single hair that gets cut from his head. And you barely notice, if you haven't reread these chapters, you wouldn't really notice it. But Guts managed to strike a single hair from Griffith's head. Which means maybe it's not that he can't hurt Griffith, but maybe he can't hurt Griffith now. Maybe because Griffith's main power is his psychological hold over others. He has such an intimidating presence alone that it's a messianic complex to people. They see him as a messiah figure, as a redeemer, as a Christ figure almost. Which is really ironic when you know the full context. So getting back to Guts on the ship. The Beast is kind of egging Guts on, like, I can give you what you want, but you gotta be willing and you gotta commit. And once you're in, you can't get out. And I think that's the big climax that coming us up, because the current arc Berserk is on is known as the Eastern Exile arc, because the Kushans are now going to war with Falconia. And the biggest thing is, what is going to be the driving factor that pushes Guts out of this slump to fight again? What will bring his ambition up again? Because Casca wants to find Guts, even though she may be brainwashed again by Griffith. Well, not Griffith, but his telepathic bitch Sonya. There's a chapter where you see, even though she's in this Truman Show style fugue state where she believes, oh, I've always been a princess of Falconia, everything's fine. There's a moment. You can't tell if it's a dream or if it actually happened, but there's a moment where she breaks out and she says, no, this isn't right. This isn't real. Guts. I need to find him. I need to get to him. And she tries to run, and she kills one of Griffith's, or at least, at the very least, very much wounds or maims one of Griffith's soldiers by grabbing a sword and attacking him to flee. And then Locust, I think it's Locust, one of Griffith's guys in the next couple panels, like, the sleeping bad is back. Okay, and it's like, okay, well, either that was a dream or it did happen. Either way, Casca wants to get back to Guts. And I think the big question is, I think the culminating thing that's going to happen, if we get any more fucking chapters of the manga this year, because holy fuck, we've been waiting so long. There's going to be a final war between Falconia and the Kushans. They're like the only two major factors left. Everybody else has joined Falconia. Midland, Tudor, all that shit. And I think one of the big things, the Moonlight Child, that's the other thing I forgot to mention, but I'm sure you know about. The Moonlight Child, I think, there can really only be two possible ways. Three, actually. I think, realistically speaking, because Guts and Casca are already marked as brands of sacrifice, or as sacrificial offerings, they can't be marked for sacrifice again. Guts still has that Bayolet. Now, everybody makes the argument he would never use it. I think, honestly, it's not that he consciously would want to use it, but I think if pushed to a point of no return, he would at the very least question the possibility. But I don't know. But yeah, I'm kind of rambling all over the place. But to wrap it up, I think Berserk is honestly the greatest story I've ever read. And I say that as a diehard Tolkien fan. No disrespect, may he rest in peace. But I feel like I guess I can't even compare. Tolkien is its own thing. He had his own story to tell, his own life, his own struggles. I think Miura, because he came from a well-do place of life, like he had great family, he came from a great upbringing, he had a good life, and I find it amazing that he was able to create such detailed storytelling of personal conflict and trauma and strife and everything else. While, granted, we may not know much about his personal life with all that, his childhood and all that, because no internet and all that, but anyways, like, it's just amazing that he was able to conjure up such a sophisticated story of struggle and perseverance. And I think it's one of the main reasons that my personal outlook on a lot of things in life has changed. Before I read Berserk, I was a lot more jaded towards the world and a lot more just angry. And it's not that I don't have those feelings now, but it's all about perspective. Everybody needs perspective in life. And Berserk is a great way to get perspective and validation. That's another thing, is by reading Berserk helps you validate your own personal struggles, because as it's not just the whole idea of like, oh, well, Gut struggled more than me, so I got fine. It's like, no, we all go through our own unique struggles and our own unique paths, our own unique causalities, if you'll call it that. And Berserk just helps to give perspective. That's the key thing I'd say, is it gives perspective. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what else more to say. I really hope we get more chapters before the end of the year, but I'll be honest, we got one chapter in March. And Truth be told, if I remember correctly, Young Animal has the manuscripts submitted, but their parent management or whatever, they because it's a collection of other manga stories as well in a big magazine, they need to get, it sounds like they want to get several manuscripts for several chapters all ready for submission, so that they're not backlogged having to wait months for each individual chapter, like trying to knock multiple chapters out at a time, which is great. I really hope that that works, but I gotta be honest. The two biggest things in my life that I am waiting for. When I was younger, I genuinely thought I would never see Grand Theft Auto 6 in my lifetime. That's not a pipe dream anymore. And I'm happy to say it. I will have Grand Theft Auto 6 in my hands, physical copy, by fall of next year, come hell or high water. But the other thing that I hope to God I see in my lifetime is the final chapter of Berserk. The final chapter. I just want to see my boy Guts smile again, man. Like, him and Casca, they don't even need to, like, I don't think it's plausible to say that they'll go back to the way they were, because hell, that's just not possible after everything they've been through. There's too much shit that's happened. There's too much sand in the pool, so to say. But I can only hope that they get some kind of a happy ending, because fuck, man. That's really all I got to say. See ya.